Welcome, everybody. This is Jeff from KMUZ, and this is a new podcast that we're going to be trying out here. It's called Northwest Real Estate Matters, and that is partially because I've never done a podcast before, but I have been a DJ. I've been the DJ of the Mid-Valley Metal Attack on Wednesdays and the DJ of Savage Circuitry on Fridays here at KMUZ. And we're going to get into this new podcast called Real Estate Matters. I'm looking forward to spending some time with you, talking to you about what matters in real estate in the Mid-Willamette Valley and around the state of Oregon. Normally what we're going to do is we're going to have a time and opportunity to talk a little bit about the current statistics and the state of the housing market in the Mid-Willamette Valley. And then we're going to have an interview. And today we're going to do an interview with Jeremiah Anderson from Nexa Mortgage. We're going to talk to him a little bit about lending, about VA loans, and a little bit about just general stuff. And we'll see where that goes. So here's the thing. Here's the reason for this podcast. What I'm trying to do is provide an opportunity for people to not feel so afraid to think about real estate as an investment. To realize that if you go into your 20s, 30s thinking about having property, what does that mean? How do you get there? What do you do to build wealth? And how does real estate fit into your wealth management portfolio? Wow, big words there. But really what it comes down to is buying a house, fixing it up, sitting on it for a couple of years, selling it for more money than you paid, and then getting a bigger house. And that's kind of, in a nutshell, the way that it works. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the statistics on home ownership in the Mid-Willamette Valley. And I'm going to go over this for you because I want you to see how that wealth gets built. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some numbers. I'm going to give you some numbers from 2020 and some numbers from 2024 so that you can have an idea of what your wealth looks like. So the first part of this podcast, we're always going to talk about the numbers and how they're changing and what it means for you if you want to jump in and buy property. Okay. And then we're going to do an interview with somebody, and then we're probably going to talk about some current listings, like multifamily listings, some strategies for you. We're going to have a lot of different interviews on this show. I'm hoping to do this show once a week, but we'll see. We'll see where it goes. Sometimes it's going to be a half hour. Sometimes it's going to be an hour. It's going to be a podcast on KMUZ. We're probably going to air it in the evening so that you can listen to it at night, or you can listen to it anytime in an on-demand environment. Okay, let's talk about real estate in the Salem-Keizer area. In residential average sales, now this is just the average sales price of a house. Now, if let's say you bought your house in Keizer in 2020, you bought that house probably for around $353,000. If you were to go ahead and buy that house, that same house today, that average house today in 2024, you would be looking at buying a house roughly in the neighborhood of $480,000. So that is $125,000, $130,000 increase in value between 2020 and 2024. So if you bought a house, bottom line is if you bought a house in 2020 in Keizer, and you sat on it, you didn't do anything with it, it was an average home in an average neighborhood, you make $120,000 if you sell it today. Now, I'm not accounting for inflation, I'm not accounting for the repairs you did on it, but that's a pretty good investment by any stretch of the imagination. All right, so let's do another one. Let's say you're down in West Salem. West Salem, your average price of a house in West Salem was $393,000 in 2020. In 2024, that same house is now an average, and this is an average of $502,000. So you've got a pretty big jump there to another $110,000 in West. Now, all of these are going to break down a little bit differently, but those are just some sales prices and averages that I'm looking at. Now, if you are in a situation where you are a property investor, and you want to look at like, okay, what is it that would, like if I want to start being a property investor, then, there's a lot of different strategies for you. You can look at duplexes. You can look at, regular houses that you can flip. You can do all kinds of things to help you gain that first amount of money in that first sale. So if you're in your 20s and you're working a couple jobs and you have a couple co-signers, you can get into this game. And I would encourage you to do that. So we're going to go into talking to Jeremiah Anderson now. I did an interview with him a few days ago. The audio on this will not be 100% great because it was recorded in a room. And again, it was recorded with equipment that I'm not 100% familiar with yet. But again, this is a new thing for us at KMUZ to do. And we were kind of recording. So it's going to sound like we're cutting into a conversation. It's actually at the beginning of the conversation. But the audio on this is it's not what I would like it to be. But we'll run with it. It's a good interview. It's going to last about 20 minutes. And we're going to talk a little bit about VA loans, first-time home buyers, and what lenders basically do in the real estate world. All right, here we go with Jeremiah Anderson. The reason that people are afraid of real estate is because they don't get like how it all works together.
They don't understand it.
Right. Yeah. So what I would want you to do is like tell me a little bit about what Nexa does for somebody who's like a first-time home buyer and is a little bit nervous about going out and starting the home buying process. Like, how do you deal? Like, if you get a real estate agent who says, "Hey, I got this client," or maybe someone just calls you out of the blue and say, "Hey, I heard your interview with Jeff on KMUZ." On the Real Estate Matters podcast, and I wanted to reach out and talk to you about what do you say to that person about how you can get them ready to be a first-time home buyer?
Well, for sure, the first thing you should do, unless you have all the cash in the bank, is you should reach out to your mortgage broker, mortgage lender, loan officer, all the same ultimate source. The person who's going to help you with the financing. You should reach out to them because you have to have your financing in order before you can even obviously go make an offer on a home, because you got to know if it's a home you can afford. You got to know it's a home that you can qualify for, and you don't want to waste your time and just looking at properties that don't even make sense for you. So speaking to your loan officer is going to be most beneficial. And when you speak to the loan officer, they're going to help you with the financial side of things. They're going to look at three things: your income, your assets, and your credit. Assets meaning we have in the bank for down payment, or if you need to look at possible low down payment or zero down payment options, you can do that too. But you can chat with them, get educated, get informed, and they're going to help you determine not only what you can qualify for on paper with the lender, but also what you feel comfortable making on a monthly payment yourself. And of course the education that comes around what's included in a payment. So those are really important, because obviously we should know what our goals are in real estate, whether it's you're buying a house for yourself or even investing. So super important to speak out to your loan officer, and you want a loan officer that hopefully is going to be able to help educate you in that process. So that way you can make a good determination of what your future might look like in your next home or your first home.
Would you say that just to piggyback on what you just said, would you advise somebody who maybe like they're 25 years old and they're working at Verizon down at the booth in the mall and they're making like maybe $40,000 a year? What would be your advice to them if they want to get into a home, and what would what could they get if they were making like around 40 a year?
Well, definitely times have changed post 2020 with real estate prices in the Marion County area. It's payments are going to be for your same house, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, average, are going to be a lot more higher than what they were back in 2018, 2019. Where if you were making $40,000 a year, you could afford something. And I'm not talking personally; I'm talking about on paper, qualify for something. You used to be able to afford something decent. Nowadays, if you just have a $40,000 income, honestly, there's, for what the payment brings in and what the lender looks at called a debt to income ratio, it's going to be very difficult to qualify for anything that's available unless you can find a really screaming good deal that's really cheap, and you don't have to really put any work into it because otherwise you have to borrow more funds, which is going to make your loan amount higher, but something that you can buy cheap. If you find a good deal, you can make it work. But at least here in the Valley area, $40,000 is going to be tough. So solution, because obviously not getting a raise is not necessarily the thing that's going to be able to work for most people.
Yeah.
Just go ask your boss for a raise. But solution would be find a cosigner. If you can get a cosigner, and that the cosigner makes sense, their financial situation, then you can certainly go and still be able to qualify and move forward. There is, and I'm going to say it lightly because it's very popular, but the county, Marion County, has an option for low-income individuals who are looking to buy their first home to get down payment funds in the form of two different sources. One is a forgivable, and the second part is non-forgivable. And the non-forgivable down payment really helps you lower the cost of the purchase price quite a bit. They'll loan you up to $100,000, but it's not forgivable, and that makes a pretty big difference. But as you can imagine, it's extremely popular program.
Honestly, Jeremiah, like if you're advising a 25-year-old, and I think we've been talking a little bit about just generalities with people, and I would say my biggest reason for being in real estate is to let people know, whether you have a college education or whether you don't, you can be successful financially if you invest in real estate. And I would say, and I'm looking for your opinion on this statement, is if you don't have the money to bring to a property like a duplex, like I would say if you're in your 20s and you want to just get into real estate, because honestly it's so much better than stocks or just putting money in a bank and paying off to. When you pay your rent to a landlord, that landlord is paying their mortgage and they're getting the equity out of that property. If you can find a friend or a relative or mom or dad or whoever to not only co-sign but maybe to borrow with you, get into that duplex, start building your equity, because if you do that now, you save, you don't give the landlord their ability to pay off their debt. You're paying your own debt, but your real estate is rising with market value, which is going to be faster than how fast your debt rises.
Yeah.
I'm curious to not only your thoughts on what I just said, but also your thoughts on what FHA programs are out there right now, and VA loans, how those might change the game for certain people, and the Homes for Heroes programs. Like those kinds of programs are really important also in this conversation.
Yeah, and if you can, whatever you do, definitely try and make sure that if you can get into the house in some way and you can afford the payment, of course, do it. Don't be afraid of the situation, because you'll never regret purchasing real estate. Mostly, there's those few one-offs, right?
People that don't want to work.
Yeah, people that don't want to work, whatever the case. You bought a bad investment.
You get depressed or something like that. That's a big deal in the Willamette Valley too, right? I mean, it rains 24/7, and people get depressed, and you might find yourself in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do, remember that you are still building equity. You're in the best place. Like even if the world feels like it's falling down, it's gonna take the bank a lot of months to get that property away from you. So go get that second job. Go get your mom to get a second job, whatever it is to hold that property.
Yeah.
Because I guarantee you in 10 years, Jeremiah, where are you going to be?
Exactly. You're going to look back and say, why didn't you buy this now?
Exactly. Why didn't I just hold on to this thing? I could have made it work. You know what? That's the human spirit that you're talking about. You see missing.
Well, and I remember chatting with people that, I wasn't in the industry in 2008, but 2008 happened, and then of course 2011 home prices hit rock bottom, and so 7 years after that, home prices started going up and comparable to what they were when they had crashed in 2010, 11.
Yep.
and people were thinking it's going to happen again, and so they waited on the sidelines, waited. And anybody who's still waiting, man, they're kicking themselves in the butt because they didn't get in.
I lost lots and lots of money.
Yeah, and we were insulated from that same scenario because we don't have as much inventory as what we did back then. Builders were building, I think, what is the statistics? Probably like, it was 1 or 2 million homes a year back then. And so we had an abundance of supply. And so when the market crashed, builders got burned. Not as many builders at the market. So then we had to play catch up because they weren't building during when the market crashed and all these low home prices. 14, 15, 16 comes around and we're way behind where we need to be, and so then we have low inventories 2019, 2020, and then we have these excellent interest rates that hit, and so home prices go up. There's there's not as many homes to compete against, and builders finally have caught up now, but or at least a decent amount, the building wise, production wise, what they should be doing. But we still don't have the inventory in our area. And so we're still seeing, even with the higher interest rate market, home prices are still appreciating around 4 to 5% in the Willamette Valley. So, I mean, if you're going to buy a $500,000 house, by this time next year, it's $525,000 and you just made $25,000. You put $500,000 in any bank account of some sort, and you're not really seeing those types of returns, are you?
Never.
I mean, unless you go play the stock market, which that can be a good investment too, I suppose. But if you don't know what you're doing, it's a lot more simpler to just go doing this.
Well, plus you get to live there,
and you get to live in the house.
Yeah.
And so, the cost of renting, if you're paying money, not only are you losing money, but you're missing out on any appreciation gains as well at the same time. And so you're missing out on and that's a compounding effect. You go 500,000, and then you go 525 the next year. Now you have 5% off of that 525. That's compound interest. And what did Einstein say? That's the eighth wonder of the world, compound interest. So there are, if you understand the compounding principles, get on them sooner or later, especially you young folks.
Yeah, I mean,
you have more time to compound.
Yep, I would absolutely say if you're in your 20s, you really need to make this a priority. And I will just share this little tidbit with people that when I bought my first house in 1994, with 10% interest, $72,000. I sold it 4 years later for $120,000. I bought another house for $215,000. I sold it 4 years later for $400,000. That $400,000 gave me $200,000 in cash, and I was able to buy a house in Salem for $525,000. It was 3 acres in a gated community, and there's no way in heck that me as a 33-year-old should have ever been in that neighborhood. But I rode that market. Like, I made $200,000 in 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I put it into even bigger properties. So when I went to sell that one that I bought 10, 15 years later, I raised my kids at that house, right? Like, it went through life with me, right? And then now, when I sold that house maybe 5 years ago, I made another $500,000.
Yeah, you essentially, most Americans, their wealth is created within the houses that they buy, your real estate. And so if you wait any longer, you're just missing out on more time.
Well, you're giving your money to somebody else who's doing exactly what I just said.
Yeah.
And
kudos to them.
Absolutely.
They're the people on the other side listening to us since they made a choice.
Yep.
And that's how, and then they're creating their wealth in such a way. There's many ways to create a wealth, and I think you should diversify, but this is one way you definitely should do it.
Well, because you can live there. While you're creating your wealth, you basically get the benefit of not having to rent.
Yeah.
And if you have extra rooms, you can, like a lot of people get creative. They rent out their rooms in Airbnb, or they rent out half their house, do dual living situations. So Jeremiah, we're gonna wrap this up in a minute here, but I would like you to tell us a little bit about if I'm a VA, if I'm a service member, if I've served in the military, I've come back to Salem. What are my benefits? What do I get to look forward to in the housing market if I want to break in?
Man, so first off, if you are a veteran, thank you for your service. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
The dedication that you've given into our country. And you, most likely, not everybody, but most of the time, everybody who's been has had some military service, different time requirements if you're National Guard or Reserve, but you serve the proper amount of time. You are the potential recipient of a VA loan, which I think is definitely the best loan that is out there on the market, and rightfully so, for our veterans. VA is great because one, you can utilize in the zero down ability that it gives you. You can purchase a property with no money down. That's pretty big. There are other programs out there that are like that, but they limit you a little bit more than VA. VA, you can go anywhere. You're not limited to the rural or not, like maybe other loan programs are. And you can go zero down on the property that you're looking at. The other really cool thing is they don't charge a monthly insurance, mortgage insurance premium.
Wow.
It's no cost, so you're just going off of principal
that could be
interest.
a $400 to $600 expense taken off.
Exactly, it's huge, and so you're mostly always going to see, at least loan amount wise, mostly always going to see a better payment. They also discount the interest rate, so that's nice. Is you're going to get better interest rate than conventional financing out there, and so. Right off the bat, you got three things that are going to be working in your favor right then and there. VA also can be very rewarding if you have a good credit history, if you have some other good financials. VA will let you have higher approvals than any other loan program out there, in the conforming loan world, that is. So you might not be able to qualify for certain houses because the payment's too high in one program, but VA might very well let you do it, potentially speaking. So VA is there to help serve the veterans, to help them get into a house and to show them support and appreciation for serving our country. And you should definitely take advantage if you have a VA loan, for sure.
Now, one other question for you, Jeremiah. I appreciate you explaining that. If you are somebody who's close to high school, getting out of high school, you're 18 to 24, consider a couple things if you're not really sure what you're going to do in college, which is, consider serving in armed forces, because not only this VA program is a great program for you to amass wealth after you get out of the service also pays for your college. You could literally go to 4 years of training in the Army, Air Force, Coast Guard, Marines, Air Force. And if you do that, they're going to pay for your college, and you're going to get this VA benefit for the rest of your life. So something definitely to consider if you're a young person and you want to have a different way to amass wealth. This is a great option. A lot of kids overlook it. A lot of kids are like, oh, I can't go to the military. But our military is so professional. It's not the same military of the Vietnam era, where unfortunately a lot of the guys were just thrown into the jungle, and I'm sure you have family members that went to Vietnam. I certainly did. What a disaster. But you know what? We learned from that. We have a much more professional Army now, and as a result of the mistakes that we made.
Are you also a recruiter, Jeff?
I just think it works together. I think real estate works together with
Sure.
it.
No, honestly, if you got a VA loan, take advantage. You're going to get the best terms. I mean, for the most part, you're going to get the best terms out there that you can get on a mortgage. Anybody if you're gonna borrow money, a huge lump sum of money, that's going to be the best terms you're really going to get from in without going into a private money scenario potentially. But yeah, take advantage. If you're a veteran, take advantage, or give us a call and we'll chat with you about what you could do, the options you have, and educate. We're educators too. We do this business, but we're educators, so that's how we want to be a benefit to our community.
right, so that was my interview with Jeremiah Anderson. Hope you enjoyed that. I think there's a lot more to talk about, obviously, with lending. It's a huge category. So we'll get into more of that. We'll get more into that as this pod progresses. In the meantime, we're going to switch our attention over to multifamily, and we're going to talk a little bit about that next. Yeah, so when people ask you, why would you invest in multifamily? Isn't that just a lot of effort and not good returns? But here's the thing. When you're young, you do get passive income. So if you buy a triplex or you buy a duplex, you live in one side of it and you rent the other side. And that, let's just take a 2-bedroom or a 2-unit complex. You stay in one side, you could rent the other side for, around, $1,500, $2,000 a month, depending on if it's at 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom and that kind of thing. The real estate also appreciates. So like in our conversation with Jeremiah, just sitting on the real estate, it appreciates. It's always the value in today's dollars, which is important. And then you get the compounding return. In addition to the rental income, let's say you decide you want to pay your whole mortgage. So you get a building for $500,000, you pay your mortgage on it, and you take that rental income from the other side and you put that toward the mortgage too. You can pay it off faster. And that gives you more equity to buy either another duplex or to buy a house and rent out the other side of the duplex. It's a way to build wealth, especially when you don't have a lot of assets in the beginning. You also have tax benefits. Owning property, you can deduct a lot of your expenses, especially if you're renting out a side of it. You can deduct things like any tools, any vehicles, if you have to buy a trailer, if you have to rent a trailer to do yard work, for example, all that can be written off. And once you kind of learn how to do those things, you in effect become the property manager. So when you go to upscale your business, your investment, like let's say you have 2 duplexes, or you have a duplex and a house and another duplex or a triplex, maybe you buy a 10plex as you go forward. But this is a great way to generate income for you and your family. And as you go, as those mortgages come down, you can leverage that income against new properties, or you can have the passive income. So some of the thing that the National Association of Realtors, they don't necessarily say one way or the other, but they don't really offer a lot of resources on multifamily housing. But if you do a Google search on it, you can find multifamily investing all over the place. So the other thing I would suggest is if you're younger, if you're under 30, and you want to start investing in real estate, look to get into the National Apartment Association. Even you don't have to really be a member, but you can go to their website and look at articles on how to be a better property manager. There's a lot of great programs out there that help you organize your expenses and your income. And I think in the Institute of Real Estate Management, that's another one, that IREM is another group to get into as well. So, as this podcast is going, I'm going to put up some numbers in our, I'm thinking in the YouTube channel, in the KMEZ YouTube channel, as this is playing the audio in the background. I'm going to put up those statistics on the YouTube channel. So, all right, well, we're getting close to the end of this show. This is we got a half hour down, and look forward to seeing you next time on Real Estate Matters Northwest. And we're going to go ahead and end it there. Thank you for listening. Jeremiah Anderson, thank you for coming in a few days ago and doing the interview with me. Look forward to seeing you and having more conversations in the future. All right, everybody at KMEZ, take care, and we'll see you next time on Real Estate Matters.